Wetter, Director Content Marketing with Informa Health and Nutrition Supply Side Portfolio. And I'm serving as your host and moderator for today. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar presentation brought to you by the Nutrition Business Journal. And we'll be talking about global turbulence and from findings within the NBJ's 2022 Global Report, we will be discussing the impacts from the persistent pandemic, which we're all quite familiar with, global inflation, shaken economies, and the war in Ukraine, and how they have combined to test the global supplement market, presenting pressure on supply chains and raising questions about product demand. Before we dive into the subject at hand, I would like to cover a little webinar platform housekeeping, because we have moved all of these webinars onto this platform on 24, and we want to ensure that you have an optimal viewing experience. You can customize your webcast console, and you can move those windows around by dragging on the title bar. You can drag from the little corner on the windows and click and move those about. You'll notice a toolbar at the bottom of the console, and those buttons allow you to open and close widgets on your screen. The webinar today will absolutely include a live Q&A. So please submit your questions, and you can submit those at any time during the presentation within the console. We'll respond to those at the end of the presentation. I'll be watching for those. Please use that questions widget, otherwise I won't see your questions submitted. The main chat is for conversation between audience members, so please feel free to be social with each other. Technical webinar questions will be answered to you directly during the presentation. So not by me, but someone technically if you have an issue. You can download the presentation slides from today by clicking on the folder icon on your screen. One of the documents, sorry about that, not one of the documents, there's one document, and that'll be a PDF presentation, and you can do that during the webinar. It won't interrupt the presentation. So moving on, I trust that you all have some familiarity with the Nutrition Business Journal, but if not, NBJ, as it is called, was founded in 1996 with the mission to provide better information so people within the supplement industry can make better decisions. It's the go-to source for in-depth industry data, trends, analysis, and insights, and is oft-cited within multimedia organizations. NBJ conducts original research and produces 11 monthly issues. Those are magazine style. Within each issue, they focus on a key area of industry intelligence, such as supply chains, condition-specific concerns and categories, finance, etc. NBJ also produces deep dive reports on specific topics like herbs and botanical, the practitioner market report, the sales channel report, the ever popular condition specific report, and the delivery systems report. And of course, for today, we'll be discussing the Global Business Report. Our 2022 NBJ Global Business Report is a 150-page report, and it does report on 22 geographic regions. The report includes in-depth analysis in the US market and overviews global factors impacting the industry. All of this is to help you best understand the trends and outlook for the overall market and priorities for planning. Of course, the full report is available for purchase. And for those of you attending today's event, we are offering a significant discount off the price of the report. To get that, just use the promo code MBJL20 for 20% off when purchasing, and we'll put that up on the screen in a little while. Today, we're joined by two of my colleagues from the Nutrition Business Journal. Claire Morton, who is the Senior Industry Analyst, Nutrition Business Journal, and Rick Polito, Editor-in-Chief, Nutrition Business Journal. As the Senior Industry Analyst for Nutrition Business Journal, Claire manages NBJ's data and insights to inform the industry on market trends and forecasts in natural and organic food and beverage, functional food and beverage, dietary supplements, and personal care. Rick, as Editor-in-Chief at Nutrition Business Journal, writes about the trends, deals, and developments in the natural nutrition industry, looking for little companies coming up and big money coming in. Rick and Claire, welcome and thank you for joining us today. Giving them a hello. We are going to start with
Thank you, Fran.
We're going to start with an overview of some of the data in the global report, and Claire will kick us off. Then we'll dive into a discussion of what it all means. So again, please remember to put your questions into the Q&A at any time during the live program. Keep those questions coming in. Again, it won't interrupt anything. So let's just dive right in, and let me hand it over to Claire.
Thank you, Fran, and hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with y'all today. These are always such fun chats, and as we were talking about when we were getting on the call, 30 minutes flies by, so I think we're going to give you a lot of information in a quick period of time. So I'm going to start out with a little quick presentation on some of the data highlights. And my goal with this presentation is to highlight some of the data, but also just give you a sense of what's included in the report. So I tried to pull a lot of bits and pieces together on what you would see if you were to purchase this whole report, and at the same time give you some insights on the global market. So as Fran said, we're covering our global supplement business report today. And what's really cool with NBJ is we have a really deep focus in the US market, but we have a really broad focus globally as well. So we're able to size the entire supplement and nutrition industry globally across 22 individual regions and or countries in that. And so we kind of have a less of a deep focus on the categories, but we're able to really see and pinpoint trends really across the globe. And so that's pretty cool and pretty powerful that we're able to do that. And so that's what this report really highlights through over 100 charts and graphs on what's happening across the world, across those 22 regions. And this report includes a PDF with this great in-depth commentary that Rick puts together and Rick and I work on together, as well as action items and top thoughts and just really great information to help you navigate that. And then raw data as well. So an Excel document with over 23 tabs of raw data on the global market, and then PowerPoint slides as well. So a lot of information there. So without further ado, I'll get into some of that here. So here we're looking at total global supplement industry sales and growth mapped out from 2017 through 2025. And so when you look at our data and our graphs, if you're new to them, I'll kind of explain what this looks like. So we're looking at historic numbers in green and then forecasts on the right in gray, paired with that gold growth line, which matches to that axis there on the right. So as we go through, you'll kind of learn to navigate these charts. And what we see is we saw obviously this huge explosive spike in 2020. It was the highest growth we've ever seen globally, to 11.1% in 2020. And I think even more notably than that, it was one of the first years where we've seen growth in every single region that we track. There were no declines. We saw growth everywhere in 2020. And not surprisingly, and as we've noted before, that growth really mirrored country's response to COVID. And we're 3 years out from 2020 now, I get that, but I think it's so important to note when we look at the context of the growth we're seeing now, that we really are experiencing this inflation and everything happening in the world right now, but we're also normalizing off of this explosive year of growth. And so, especially in those regions where we saw even more of a spike due to COVID, say the US, Latin America, we're really experiencing that normalization. So I think that's just still really important context as we think of that growth line slowing and steadying in the coming years. So what that brings us to is 2022, our current estimates are still, again, that kind of delayed normalization. So coming off of that 11.1% to 6.7 in 2021, and then now slowing to about 4% in 2022. But that still brings our industry globally past that $175 billion benchmark. So I think one of the important notes here is even with that normalization, if you focus really on those bars that we're looking at, it's that stair-step pattern where none of those bars are dropping back below pre-COVID levels. And so we're really experiencing that sustained boost, even with the impacts of what's been happening what happened in the end of 2022 and what we're expecting to happen in 2023. So that just gives you a view of kind of the global industry as a whole. And then here, this pie chart gives you a sense of what we're tracking within that. And so here are when I say 22 individual regions tracked, we do have a lot of countries we track under Western Europe kind of combined there. So this just gives you a visual of kind of what that map of the world looks like from a supplement perspective. And the US really drives a lot of trends because it makes up 35% of the global market. And we don't expect that to change in our forecasted period. So we do expect the US to continue to make up about a third, if not more, of global sales. And so anything happening in the US really kind of is that leading indicator of what's happening worldwide, but we are starting to see momentum in the combined Asian market. So China making up the second largest piece of that total pie, India and the rest of Asia, and Japan as well. So all of those Asian countries combine to make up kind of getting near that slice of the pie that the US makes up. So just interesting momentum there. And then giving you another sense of kind of what we track here. We combine vitamins and minerals globally. And so this is one of the interesting areas that was most affected by COVID. So we saw the largest spike in 2020, which is pretty remarkable for vitamins and minerals. It had been a pretty slow going category. And now we see this huge spike in 2020, and then even more of a dramatic normalization coming off of that in the coming years. And so the global vitamin and mineral market now reaching over 65 billion in total sales. And again, we see that stair-step pattern. So it's not, even with that slowing growth, we're not seeing vitamins and minerals backing off quite a bit. And interestingly, from a global perspective, more so than just in the US, we see the strongest growth and strongest sales in vitamins and minerals in some of these emerging countries. So when we identify a country or a region as an area of opportunity or an emerging market, we tend to see vitamins and minerals really being that low-hanging fruit, for lack of a better word. So we see the strongest sales and growth there in vitamins and minerals. And so an interesting spike there in 2020 coming off of that. In the report, across all of the regions that we track, we cover vitamins and minerals, herbs and botanicals, and then kind of all other specialty sports meal supplements as well. And then we also cover all of these sales and totals across these regions. So China is a country that we get a lot of questions on in particular. So I thought that would be the one that I'd pull in here. And so we see in China supplement sales and growth. And interestingly, despite the COVID, everything that happened with COVID there, we didn't see as much of a spike in 2020 as perhaps in other regions, but we also didn't see a huge drop off into 2021. So we're seeing some more of that normalization coming into 2022 and beyond. But again, nothing to the point of a decline in our forecasted period here in the Chinese market, which now we estimate at really surpassing that $25 billion benchmark as a supplement market. And as much as we talk about the Chinese market, it's interesting to note that's still a fraction of the US market. And so it'll be interesting to watch that growth in the coming years and kind of with all the turbulence in China, what happens with the supplement market in addition to everything else. But just an example and a snapshot here of a country that we track. So with that, as Fran said, we've got a discount code on that report. So NBJL20. And if you download these slides, you can link directly to that report on the store. And we're available for any further questions on that. Cindy on our team is happy to answer any of those questions. And here's her contact info if you've got any further questions on that. And with that, I think we'll move into a little conversation and Q&A with Fran and Rick.
All right, thank you so much, Claire. So lots of information in this report. Obviously, it's impossible to distill it all in a 20-minute presentation. But Rick, let's turn to you for a moment here too. I mean, as a key writer in the report, and well, of course, Claire as the analyst. We had a question from the audience about really leveraging this report to produce analysis that's relevant for team. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions about how a business can best leverage the information that's here in this report to help in its forecasting? I know that the market is ever changing, but I was hoping you might be able to lend your perspective on that.
Thank you, Fran. I think when I think about this report, I really think about, when I think about all our reports right now, is there's never been, a situation like this, at least not in my lifetime, where we could have, a fading pandemic, this whole patchwork of either inflation or recession, labor strife, a war, global trade, climate change. There's so many different things going on. And in this report, we tried to touch on what's the backdrop in each of these countries, what's going on with the economy, what's going on with health, what's the pandemic response, what's the delayed echo effect on that, what's going on with energy in all these different markets. So that's a lot of what we get here. I mean, we can't go into depth on each of the markets, but we can sort of present, like I said, that backdrop as to what are the decisions, what's driving the trends there. So I think that's really important. And then when you pair that with the data that Claire's able to bring in from our network that MBJ has, and with all the different access points we have for data, I think it's putting those two together. It's what's the backdrop and what's the numbers. And it's a very complicated backdrop for the whole globe. And then when we go into the market by market, it gets really interesting really quick.
Yeah, I mean, we look at some other factors in some of our other reporting as well here too. I mean, let's talk a little bit about supply chains and the global challenges, some shifts that are happening partly because of global strife. The war in Ukraine is clearly impacting certain supply chains. Climate change is also affecting supply chains as well. So can we talk a little bit about pivoting and resilience for brands that maybe need to remain agile with their supply chains, and the importance of looking at the consumer part of the formula in terms of what they're demanding, and then how to maybe drive some of the thinking with those shifts? Any thoughts about that? I'll open that to either of you.
Well, I think that you sort of need to remember just how complex this is. I was talking to someone, this was just a few months ago, about raw fish oil sales and how much that's gone up. And it's because, as I said, it's a complex and this intricate way things are happening. It's because there's no Ukraine, the sunflower oil coming out of there that was going into pet food. So now all the pet food people want to get fish oil. And there's all these things. It's not just supplements that's going around. It's not just the supplement supply chain. It's where these different countries are putting their emphasis on what they can grow, what they can sell. And so there's an example of a connection I had never thought of between fish oil and dog food. So there's all these things going on, and that's why agility becomes so important, sort of spreading out your risk across different markets. And I don't know that, enough companies have done that. We've been talking about bringing more of the supply chain back to the United States, but hey, let's just start by spreading that out more around the globe so that we're not all so dependent on a couple of different areas. China standing out, China facing all the trouble it's having in its economy with drought, with, they got their delayed effect of COVID. So I think it's these last few years, as I said, it's unprecedented number of challenges layered on top of each other. If you don't have a sort of wake up call from that to, spread your risk, I don't know, maybe you're deaf and you can't hear it.
Well, the pocketbook is going to feel it if you don't hear it with your ears. I recently did some coverage related to the sunflower issue in Ukraine as the primary supplier of sunflower globally to multiple supply chains that include supplements, because the sunflower seed oil that comes out of that region is providing excipient oil to many, many different manufacturers. And basically the profile that we were looking at was looking at alternatives, which then kind of push you into looking at price parity and availability as well, because if one supply chain is crimped, then another supply chain is going to perhaps feel too much pressure on their demand. So demand planning is intensely important. And I think one of the values of this report is to really be thinking on a larger level about all of the pressures globally, and to plan in that demand planning for perhaps worst challenge case scenarios in that way.
And I think an interesting point on the demand side, and it's getting a little bit away from this report, but I think still really helpful information in our forecasting is, recent data from the US market in particular, which, like I said, is always kind of a leading indicator for us of other global markets, really points to the fact that consumers, when pushed with price and trying to cut down on their costs, actually prefer to switch to a value brand or switch to a store brand and buy a product of lesser cost rather than cut that product out altogether. And we expect to see that globally as well. So I think when we think about the supply chain, that's a really important factor as we see growth slowing, not necessarily just as a sign of demand slowing globally, but more so consumers really limiting on those costs and switching to those lower priced options. And so to your question about thinking along the entire supply chain globally, that's another really important factor that we expect to see coming, especially in 2023.
Well, and relatedly and tragically too, with the tragedy going on in Turkey and Syria right now, there could be impacts on certain supply chains, particularly around botanicals. Is there, I don't know if you're able to even comment on this yet, but will anticipated effects from a global tragedy, this global tragedy be built into the analytics within this year, especially around botanicals?
I think it's really hard to say, because what we're seeing domestically, and I'm sure this is true around the world, is that so many people are just overstocked right now, from the ingredient suppliers to the manufacturers, to the distributors, the retailers, and then right into your medicine cabinet, the consumers. So I don't know if there's going to be a delayed effect coming out of this, because a lot of people had a lot of material on hand. So it's really going to be hard to tell what that's going to do and which markets are going to be affected by the earthquake and the strife there.
Yeah, it'll be material specific, perhaps.
Well, and I think it's important to note, we expect the global urban botanical market in 2022 for finished products to be about 45.5 billion. So that's a huge market, right? And so I think without a doubt, that'll be part of our analysis going into this year is what happens to that market. But we've already projected that it'll slow a little bit, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, and remember, the biggest chunk of that pie is still the United States. And MBJ's dropped our growth estimates for 2022, remarkably. So there's a lot of things that are changing really fast, and so much driven by inflation, and it's the demand that's going to drive what's needed along that supply chain. So there's a lot of overlapping factors right now. Like I said, the amount of supply people have, and then the demand dropping, and then this, as Claire said, going to the value brands for so many consumers. There's a lot to think about.
Just kind of sidebar relatedly on botanicals, we're talking the global market here, but we did have a question about whether you're tracking the CBD market or cannabinoid market, which is technically botanicals, but the regulatory environment is challenging, we'll just put it that way, where dietary supplements are concerned in the United States, but it's different on a global basis. Is that anything that you're viewing within the context of this? I'm not suggesting that you are, but it is a question, so I'd like to just kind of put that out there.
It's definitely something from a data perspective that we track a lot more closely within the US market. It is included in our urban botanical sales globally, but we don't break it out specifically for any of the regions that we track. So we are paying attention to it globally, paying a little bit more attention within the US. And I will note within the US in particular, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see this playing out globally, is right now we're saying CBD is kind of just another leading botanical ingredient. It's not going to change the world in the way that maybe we thought it was in 2019, but now it's just a top trending botanical ingredient that we kind of track along with echinacea and elderberry. And so that's kind of what we're seeing in the US. So yes, I think we are paying attention to it, but we don't break it out data-wise in our global modeling.
Thanks for clarifying that. Of course, hemp as a whole has a larger marketplace. You know, we're coming really close to the end of our half hour, so I wanted to just ask you another question here that came up around the data on the China supplement market. Is the data that you're tracking, does that include both online environments as well as brick and mortar environments, or is that also including multi-level marketing within that as well?
It does, yeah. So within our US market, we do break sales out by channel. We don't break it out by channel globally, but in a similar vein, we do estimate all of global sales. So that does include MLM, online, et cetera, for any region that we track. So we don't break out that MLM sales specifically. But I think it's important to note within our global report, we do company profiles. So some of those top MLMs, their revenues are estimated on a global basis, and we have a full company profile on them. So a company like Herbalife or Amway would be included in that. And those MLM and online sales are rolled up into those totals for countries and regions.
All right.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, absolutely. We are really coming very to the end of our half an hour here. So I'm going to put Cindy up here on the screen here, because if you in our audience are interested in learning more about Nutrition Business Journal as a whole, or about the Global Business Report, or any of our Nutrition Business Journal or Nutrition Business Reports, please reach out to Cindy Van Schoen. She's the Business Development Manager. Here's her contact information right here. And furthermore, I want to remind everyone again today, thank you first off for attending. And if you've attended today, you can use this code on our store. I know you can't click on that link, but you go to the NBJ store and you can find that with a quick, easy search, whatever your search engine preference is and your browser preference. And before we really do come to a close, I just want to thank Claire and Rick today for the great information. And it's just a teeny tad of what is available in the full NBJ Global Business Report. And I want to just ask either of you if you have anything else you'd like to add before I bring it home here.
I guess I'd just add, I'd add, just going back to 1992, it's the economy, stupid. And it's millions of different economies, or, dozens, I'll say. I think that's the most important thing for us to be looking at country by country. As I mentioned, China's having a rough time with their economy around real estate. Who thought that was something we need to think about? So we need to think about that. You got to think about Western Europe with energy prices. And of course, the United States with inflation and the perception of inflation, which we've noted in our mid-year economic and supplement business report update. So I think, like I said, just keep thinking about the economy, think about those big headlines, and then think about how that's going to, affect individual consumers and individual markets.
And I think just to add to that, for any company operating in the global space with operations in multiple countries, this report is just great for that benchmarking across regions, across countries, and really understanding how the market compares and is moving across all of these different regions.
All right, fantastic. So to our audience, if you're already a subscriber to Nutrition Business Journal and you purchase the reports, you know what a great advantage this provides you in a competitive market. I do encourage others to consider making this investment in your business to inform your strategies and decisions. And if you do have questions specifically about this report or other NBJ reports as well, or your subscription, please reach out again to our colleagues. I mentioned Cindy Van Schoen, who is the Business Development Manager at Nutrition Business Journal, or Ashley Patterson, the Sales Associate at Nutrition Business Journal. And with that, we have come to the close of our 30 minutes, how quick that goes. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and thank you for your continued support and best wishes, of course, for continued success. And we look forward to seeing you soon at perhaps Natural Products Expo West in Anaheim, where we will be doing an NBJ State of the Industry, and Supply Side East in Secaucus, New Jersey in April. So we do hope to see all of you in person soon and back here online. Thank you again for attending.